Welcome to episode 14 of Breaking the Ice. My name is Rebecca.
And I'm Connor, and we are your co-hosts.
This week, we're talking about the internet, or rather, the lack of reliable internet connection in Nunavut.
Nunavut is the only Canadian province or territory that has no fiber internet. This means that Nunavut is the only jurisdiction in Canada where residents do not have access to internet speeds over 25 megabits per second.
Instead, Nunavut must rely on satellite internet. In addition to slow speeds, satellite internet is also incredibly expensive. To get 55 gigabytes per month at a download speed of 5 megabits per second, it would cost a Nunavut resident up to $400 per month, with extra fees for going over the monthly limit.
This internet gap has become even more stark during the COVID-19 pandemic, and it has left many Nunavut residents unable to access online services, from education to healthcare to simply following the news.
Luckily, there are plans to change this sorry state of affairs. CanArctic Inuit Networks is planning to build a fibre-optic smart cable to Nunavut and other northern communities, which will finally bring fast and reliable internet to this overlooked territory.
So today we're pleased to welcome CanArctic Inuit Networks COO Madeleine Redfern to the program. This is Madeleine's second appearance on Breaking the Ice, as she was also a member of our panel on doing business in northern Canada and Greenland in episode 12.
In addition to her role at CanArctic Inuit Networks, Madeleine is also the former mayor of Iqaluit and the executive director of Arctic 360's Northern Branch, among many other hats.
Now let's get to our conversation and learn how CanArctic Inuit Networks plans to improve internet in Nunavut. Well, thank you very much for appearing on Breaking the Ice today. Your second appearance on Breaking the Ice, in fact. For any listeners who didn't hear your previous episode, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about your own personal professional background, a little bit about yourself.
I'm from Iqaluit, which is the capital of Nunavut, my home community. And my background is both in business, a variety of different ventures that I've been involved with, significant involvement with a number of non-governmental organizations, and former politician, mayor for Iqaluit for 2 terms, and back in business. And now I'm the COO for CanArctic Inuit Networks.
Thanks, Madeleine. I think sort of central to our discussion today, we're going to be talking about internet and accessibility in the north. Could you sort of describe the state of internet in Nunavut as it is sort of now and how this sort of affects the communities there?
We have 25 communities in our territory spread over about 2 million square kilometers. We're the only jurisdiction in Canada that is 100% satellite dependent. And so many of the other places have fiber optic, especially into their capital cities. So what it means is that we often have slow, unreliable, unstable, insecure, and unaffordable internet. So a lot of places in southern Canada, you can have bundled services with your internet, your phone, and your cable, and have unlimited and pay anywhere, in around $100, $150 range. For us, we have really low data caps, so we have really low speeds. And as a result, most people pay, anywhere between $100 to $200 for a base, package. And then you're hit with overages, depending on how much you're using the internet and the family size. It can be just within a few days or a week or so after the month, beginning of the month, that you have to sort of end up having a family member who's the internet cop sort of tell family members, like, stop, you can't do stuff because it just it gets too expensive. So I run a business currently because of COVID out of my home, and my internet overages are anywhere $800 to $1,000 a month, and then I pay extra for a landline, and I pay extra for a cell phone, and I pay extra for cable. So all in all, if I combine all those for just a household of 2, my costs are anywhere between $1,500 to $2,000 a month. And I'm not doing Netflix. It's not even, for the most part, you're capable of doing a lot of streaming. And Zoom, since COVID, which is the preferred choice of meeting, sometimes I can get on, sometimes I can't. If their weather, is foggy or snowing or raining, it literally our internet can crap out. And this also means that when you're at the store, you'll see sometimes signs which says cash only. I know that in a restaurant was at a point where the internet went down and people couldn't even get money out of the ATM, because when the internet goes down, it goes down everywhere. So it's very, very vulnerable and very, very expensive, and even so vulnerable that when a fiber optic gets cut in either northern BC, northern Alberta, Yukon, Northwest Territories, it actually can affect our service in Nunavut. Not that long ago, the service went down because of a fiber optic cut in a different province, and the RCMP were issuing statements to our community members saying that if you need an emergency, you have to come to our detachment. And this is 2021. Imagine you're having a break and enter, someone's having a heart attack, someone's finding themselves in a domestic violence situation, and you literally are supposed to go to their RCMP detachment to get assistance. That's the state of, when you say, what's the state of your internet? That's the state of our internet.
And so why has it been so difficult to bring proper internet to the north? What's been standing in the way?
Well, it is costly. And so there's been fiber that has been built out, especially in the last 10 years, to many parts of Canada. So there's fiber now in Northwest Territories and in most of the communities, except a handful. And in Yukon, all the communities are connected except one. And so that's partly why my company, CanArctic Inuit Networks, is working to bring fiber optic into Nunavut to address some of these problems. And while LEOs, which is low Earth orbiting satellites, are starting to be deployed, OneWeb has satellites up overhead and will be in full service by November 2021. SpaceX is deploying satellites regularly as well. That might help some of our communities, but again, it's going to take time for that to work. And even the satellite companies say nothing beats fiber, with respect to the speeds, the stability. And a lot of people don't realize how integrated satellite and fiber are. So satellite companies want and need to effectively download a lot of their data that they're holding into ground stations and get that data onto fiber and move it, where it needs to around the world. So 99% of the world's communications happens on fiber and subsea fiber.
And in that last answer, I know you started to touch on your sort of role as COO at CanArctic Inuit Networks. Could you tell us just a little bit more about what CanArctic Inuit Networks is and what you do there specifically?
So CanArctic Inuit Networks is a company that was formed at the end of 2020. It's a Nunavut-based Inuit-led company, and my role is to assist in getting the necessary funding and financing in place for the projects, to work with our key stakeholders and partners so that they're aware of this opportunity to help bridge the digital divide, to work towards getting fiber into some of the remaining communities in Iqaluit, except one, and to Voisey's Bay, to make politicians and Inuit organizations and communities aware that we also have an opportunity not just to have a fiber optic cable, which is a telecommunications infrastructure, but also to make it at least portions of it as a smart cable. SMART cable stands for Science Monitoring and Reliable Telecommunications. And what that is putting sensors on the cable So it's possible to get real-time data and baseline data on the marine environment. That includes pressure, salinity, temperature, currents, and with hydrophones, also noise that's within the marine environment related to either whales or ships or submarines, and then being able to benefit from that data, because as I said, right now it's a highly data deficient area. So this helps with climate change monitoring. It helps with environmental marine protection. We've got a number of protected areas along Iqaluit and in Nunavut. It helps with knowing about the ship traffic that's going through. It can also provide information to ships' captains about where the whales are, because whale migration times are now starting to change, in part because of climate change or shipping traffic, to do things like avoid ship whale strikes. So it's pretty exciting being able to, look at how to make infrastructure multi-purpose, help the military with all domain awareness, help with satellite redundancy, help with evidence-based decision-making, getting baseline data, and generally, this information, is necessary because we know that we're living in a place where there's dramatic changes are happening. So change is not only related to climate change, but also opening up of our waterways, more shipping traffic. Baffinland proposes to increase their shipping significantly over the phases. And so you want, good data, and you want real-time data. And data needs to be sent over telecommunications infrastructure. It's very hard to do that amount of data reliably and affordably on satellite.
Absolutely. Well, that's really interesting. So as I understand it, the plan is to build over 2,000 kilometers of fiber optic network, and that will be between Iqaluit and Clarenville, which is in Newfoundland. So what communities are going to be benefiting from this project, and how will this increase connectivity in both Nunavut and Nunavut?
Actually, the plan is adjusted. So we plan on building the fiber from just off the shore of Nunavut. We've signed an MOU with Bulk International, which is a Norwegian subsea fiber and database company. So that's really exciting news and development. And we're able to work collaboratively for a shared portion of the route. They're building fiber all the way from Norway into North America. And they have a preference to go through Nunavut for a number of reasons. One is that they like to do social good, but it still has to make sense from a business perspective. They don't plan on connecting the communities where we would. And there's also an opportunity for them to potentially build a data center in that region, since they have abundant and affordable power. And also it offers an opportunity for that region to look at getting into the data services sector. So, and then we would extend our cable up to Iqaluit under phase 1. And under phase 2, we would look at connecting to Nunavut's O-phone. So that would bring 3 regions of Inuit Nunavut, and Nunavut, and our cable would have redundancy. Redundancy is incredibly important. It means that if there's a break anywhere, that you have a backup. Your data travels on another cable. So, and it really supports and protects the investments of those respective networks. And then we would also look at having our network extend up to the high Arctic along the east coast of Baffin Island, connecting the communities along the way, and potentially a connection into Nunavut, which is a military port, Baffinland, where there's iron ore. We know that there's going to be a lot more robotic mining and remote sensing that's important, and also for safety. And we've also costed out for potential other phases, connections into the Iqaluit region, right, understanding and respecting that the Iqaluit also have a hydrofiber project that they're working on, but not all their communities are going to be connected, because there will be an end of that hydro line. And also we've looked at costing out the potential expansion of the network in Northwest Territories. There's one fiber optic line currently into Nunavut. There's plans to extend and build a second cable from Dawson City into Nunavut and possibly to Tuktoyaktuk, and then a fiber optic cable that goes along the Northwest Passage, connecting communities in the Iqaluit, and including Cambridge Bay, where there's the CHARS, which is the Canadian High Arctic Research Station, highly data dependent, and making that possibly a smart cable, because the sensors along that route would provide valuable data, not only for climate change, but also shipping traffic as the Northwest Passage begins to open up more and more. So we're letting Inuit organizations and communities and different levels of government understand of the opportunity. We're focused highly on our phase one of the network, as you can imagine, but also letting people know that there is, a really good opportunity to connect more communities and getting them off of satellite, and making significant improvements in an area of where people now understand more and more that telecommunications is a basic necessity.
Absolutely. I'm wondering, the quality of internet that's going to be provided by these cables, is it equivalent to something that would be available in Southern Canada?
Absolutely. So it would be very similar to, and because the fiber optic, the way it works is that the data travels on very thin fiber optic cables. And so the ability to have, virtually unlimited data, fast, reliable, stable, and affordable internet is it's transformative. You just cannot get comparable service, stability, and cost with satellite, not without putting significant subsidies and to bring the cost down, but then you just still don't get the reliability and stability that fiber brings.
This is sort of touches on the next question I was going to ask, which is about the potential for LEO satellites, which may be coming next year. You mentioned SpaceX before and other companies. Are these companies going to be your competitors in this? And if so, what is the competitive advantage of a smart cable?
As I said earlier, many people don't realize how integrated satellite and fiber is. And so what you want to do when you're a satellite company is to get your data off of satellites. And you want to get that onto a fiber network as quickly as possible. And so what we'll see is the development of more and more, satellite dishes, either ground stations, which is what OneWeb would effectively transfer their data down to, and then onto a fiber network. And or SpaceX, their business model is different. They're looking at direct sales to customers rather than working with the internet service providers. And time will tell how SpaceX will work in northern conditions. But as I said, they are in full deployment, both companies, OneWeb and SpaceX. And so it will be interesting to see how things work. OneWeb just announced that they entered into an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, with Northwest Tel. That was announced yesterday. And our meetings with ISPs, they too have said nothing beats fiber. And they acknowledge and recognize that satellite and fiber integrated, that's how it works with Northwest Tel. That's why I said, you've got fiber into the other regions, and they're keen, as is everyone, to see fiber come into Nunavut.
You mentioned sort of the immense value of having these smart cables for data collection purposes in multiple different areas. I'm wondering if you think that most cables will be smart cables going forward, if you can look at other areas in the world where smart cables are maybe more prevalent or sort of showing their worth.
It depends. I mean, you have to analyze what that opportunity is and the need for that data. So we are seeing that there are other places in the world, Korea, other Arctic regions, are looking also at the smart cable. It does cost more money. It also, there's maintenance requirement on an annual basis for it. So I would not think that the majority of cables are being built will be smart cables, but we're also seeing a number of dark cables or cables that aren't being used as a primary, or they've been sort of mothballed telecommunications cables being revitalized to be sensor cables. And primarily moving that data, through the cable network back to effectively a server, a place where that data then can be sent to the respective clients. So no, I don't see all cables becoming smart cables. And you do have to look at effectively, like we're doing, as a separate business case for them, because they're separate customers, and there is value for where we plan on putting our cables, particularly through the Davis Strait and Baffin Bay, because of climate change, because of the increased shipping, because of the marine protected areas. It makes a lot of sense for a smart cable to be put, to make our fiber cable a smart cable. It also makes sense probably for the Western network, if that does get put on rails through the Northwest Passage. It makes a lot of sense for that to be a smart cable. Because it's very expensive, you have to assess, is there a marketplace for it? And who are your prospective customers, whether that be environmental groups, different levels of government, Inuit organizations, and military.
So speaking about other cables, from the CanArctic Inuit Networks website, I found an example of a subsea fiber cable network in Alaska, which actually reduced the bandwidth charges by 60% over 3 years. Are you able to comment on this similar project and whether the CanArctic cable would be able to expect similar results to that?
So the cable you're speaking of has actually already been built. It's done by Quintillion. They purchased Arctic Fiber's original project plans, and their phase one did connect the communities of Alaska. And they do have future phase 2 and phase 3 plans, both that appear to be marine and terrestrial. Again, redundancy is incredibly important component of any network, and looking at where there are opportunities, customer base, can it be done on a business case? Is there government funding and support for those cables? So I understand that having attended a number of conferences or panels with representatives from them, that they very much are keen to expand their network. Exactly how, where, and when, I haven't heard any firm announcements, but I've also seen them enter into agreements with satellite companies to do, as I said earlier, which is connecting their terrestrial fiber networks to satellite companies. And so they're definitely busy. And I expect that we'll see their network expand further and further over time as well.
And I know we sort of keep coming back to the cost of these projects and the need for different levels of cooperation and collaboration. I know you've mentioned sort of engagement with the communities themselves, the different levels of government and other industry actors. I'm wondering, in your case, who is supporting this project and who are sort of the key partners who are playing a role in this?
So we have the support of the Inuit organizations in our region. So Nunavut Incorporated, Kicquetan Inuit Association. I'm in Rankin Inlet. I saw the president of the Kivilik Inuit Association. I'll be heading to Cambridge Bay next week and seeing if I can meet with some folks over there. They're fully aware and supportive of our project. This helps get Inuit into an economic sector where previously we have not had much participation in. This also, supports Indigenous economic reconciliation. We've had significant amount of government subsidies and investments into companies that provide a service, but they're not from our northern Inuit regions. Inuit participation, Inuit capacity is incredibly important component for our project. And we have the support of the Chambers of Commerce. We have the support of a number of environmental organizations, as well as community groups and businesses that are highly, highly dependent on data transfer. Most of the companies end up having to do workarounds, or even governments, truth be told, have to do workarounds, because you just can't send large files. So one of the companies is an unmanned aviation company, and you can imagine their clients, it's video footage and a lot of video footage. And so in the end, what you have to do is save it in another format instead of sending it over the internet. And that causes delay. And it definitely is not real time. So a lot of the rest of the world that has fiber can do things like remote mining and remote surveillance, sending large data. Governments are in the same boat. I know that people who are sometimes applying for development permits for major projects, they have to send their data on the plane, hard copies or on thumb drives, because you just simply can't send it over the internet. So we have, everyone is super keen to get fiber into our region and into their communities.
I know you also mentioned sort of the cooperation with Norway earlier on. Does any sort of international collaboration pose any concerns for like a national project, or are these international cooperations sort of a great benefit that can increase the prevalence of these type of cables?
It depends on the international actor. So Norway is effectively one of our allies and is known worldwide to be at the forefront on a lot of Arctic innovation projects. And we consider them a good and safe and stable and trustworthy partner. However, there are other international actors or companies that who may have undue political state interference or other political and economic sovereignty interests that may actually potentially put our infrastructure and our data at risk. And you have to do that analysis. There's a recognition that the Communist Party of China has way more, interest in some of the infrastructure, especially telecommunications infrastructure, that we need to be very wary of, because if they have the ability to take over or to access, to take over the infrastructure and to shut it down, puts, that infrastructure at risk. But also if they have access to very sensitive data, it becomes a national security concern or interest. And so it's important to do that analysis. Be mindful of who you're getting into, potentially partnering with. And I get that, certain companies offer significantly discounted services or products But you have to again be wary if you're exchanging, lower cost at the expense of something as important as your potential region on your customers or your national security interests.
What are you predicting in terms of how much this project is going to cost to complete?
Well, under phase one, we are under $100 million. And we've got funding applications into the federal government, both under the Canadian Infrastructure Bank Indigenous Stream, as well as the Universal Broadband Fund being run by ISED. We're in the process of we had offered potential investment opportunities to different Indigenous groups, and working with a few of them right now to look towards having them invest in this project with, not only the benefit of connecting this region, but also with a return on investment. So we also know that once you bring fiber into any region or any community, it's an immediate force multiplier. It's a massive boost into the existing businesses being able to use applications that they can't use, for things like product or service management, like our Northwest company. It helps develop and foster people being able to work in that community, like in the media services, where a lot of that stuff right now is sent south. So developing websites, brochures, printing materials, and even sort of our own cultural products. So we have people who are making videos and it gets sent down to Toronto or Montreal to be edited. And then even more bizarrely is that a lot of times this content is uploaded to, on a server and available on the World Wide Web to everyone around the globe. And we have the hardest time accessing our own cultural content because of the quality of our own internet. So, language applications and language, preservation and advancement. I mean, those are really important. Being able to showcase our unique and wonderful culture, with ourselves, but with other Inuit elsewhere and other people who are interested around the world. But it's bizarre that we're in this situation where we have the least amount of access to our cultural content. So no, it's going to be really transformative when we bring fiber into our region and into our communities.
Absolutely. And as a follow-up to that, I'm wondering also what the timeline is going to be for all this.
Well, our timeline to bring fiber into Iqaluit and into Iqaluit under phase one is 2023, 2024. In part, there are some challenges as it relates to, there's a lot of cable being built around the world right now. And there's a limited number of companies that can build the cable and install the cable. So we have to get our funding and financing all in place, and then begin quickly to start working on the design of the cable and the construction of the cable, and then the goal and some marine surveys that were not going to happen this year, but maybe next year, and then with the installation happening the year after. And then there's some work that always has to be done at the cable landing stations and connecting into the existing networks, usually because we're not an ISP. So we're what's known as a middle mile service provider or backbone. We don't sell internet services directly to the customer. We would have agreements with internet service providers, and then they would connect their customers to our fiber network through their own sort of last mile network.
And I know throughout this conversation you touched on some of the barriers to implementing this project, some of those being costs, some of them being the actual logistics of putting it into place. Do you have any sort of key barriers that you think are the most vital to address? And if so, how do you sort of plan to overcome these obstacles?
Well, we're working hard to inform and educate people, and everyone is for the most part really excited to see fiber come, as I said, into a region where there is none. we can definitely, with our team of who has decades of expertise and experience, get this cabled, deployed and in service 2023, 2024. And so let's just get it done. That's what, there's no reason to wait. There's no reason, for us to see our region and our communities and our people, having to wait another 5 years or longer. The COVID and the pandemic has illustrated something that we already knew. If anything, it just exacerbated the problems. People had to work from home. The home network is not the same as most employers' networks. It's people, children just for the most part struggled or could not connect to distance learning. People who wanted to be able to attend post-secondary from the north, it's just difficult, if not sometimes impossible. And the costs, as I said, are just exorbitant. It's not stable, it's not reliable. So, we've been pressing is that let's invest now. Let's get this project done now. We don't have the time or the luxury to wait. And there's definitely lots of federal money to help invest and support the creation of new telecommunications infrastructure. And ideally, we want to see the federal investments support real northern and regional based and local based and Indigenous owned, Indigenous led and partnerships that benefit our communities. So we're pretty excited by this prospect. So if everyone says, which they do, that this is a priority and connecting this region, to fiber needs to be done. So CanArctic is ready to do that now.
Well, thank you very much for your time today, Madeleine. That's the end of our questions. But before we finish, is there anything else you think the listeners of Breaking the Ice should know about either this project, Internet in the North, anything on your mind?
I think it's an exciting opportunity, and it would be a shame to miss out on this opportunity. As I said, so as a number of people I've met recently is just let's get her done.
Get her done. That's great. And where can people go to learn more?
Oh, well, we are in the process of revamping our website, and that should be up and running basically in the next week or so.
Great. Well, thank you again for your time. We really appreciate talking to you today.
Thank you, Madeleine.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Bye.